Other southern colonies. As Jamestown was developing in Virginia, new groups of colonists began planning their move to America. Many English Catholics came to America to escape religious persecution. English Catholics had long been against England's separation from the Roman Catholic Church. For this reason, they were not allowed by the Church of England to worship freely. Many English leaders also feared that English Catholics would ally with Catholic countries such as France and Spain in conflicts. Maryland. In the 1620s, George Calvert, the first Lord Baltimore, asked King Charles I for a charter establishing a new colony in America for Catholics. In 1632, Charles issued the charter to Calvert's son, Cecilius, who took over the planning of the colony. Cecilius, known as the second Lord Baltimore, named the colony Maryland in honor of England's Queen, Henrietta Maria. It was located just north of Virginia in the Chesapeake Bay area. Calvert intended for the colony to be a refuge for English Catholics. It would also be a proprietary colony. This meant that the colony's proprietors or owners controlled the government. In 1634, a group of 200 English Catholics came to Maryland. Included in the group were wealthy landowners, servants, craftspeople, and farmers. Settlers in Maryland benefited from the lessons that learned by the Jamestown colonists. They spent their time raising corn, cattle, and hogs so that they would have enough to eat. Before long, many colonists began growing tobacco for profit. Although Catholics founded Maryland, a growing number of Protestants began moving there in the 1640s. Soon religious conflicts arose between the Catholics and the Protestants in the colony. To reduce tensions, Lord Baltimore presented a bill to the Colonial Assembly that became known as the Toleration Act of 1649. This bill made it a crime to restrict the religious rights of Christians. This was the first law supporting religious tolerance passed in the English colonies. The Toleration Act did not stop all religious conflict. However, it did show that the government wanted to offer some religious freedom and to protect the rights of minority groups. The Carolinas and Georgia. Colonies were also established south of Virginia. In 1663, the English King Charles II gave much of the land between Virginia and Spanish Florida to eight of his supporters. At first, Carolina was a single colony. However, the settlements were far apart, and it was hard to govern them. In 1712, the colony separated into North and South Carolina. Most of the colonists in North Carolina were farmers who had moved south from Virginia. Colonists primarily from Europe settled South Carolina. Those who paid their own way received large grants of land, and some brought enslaved Africans with them. By 1730, about 20,000 enslaved Africans were living in the colony compared to some 10,000 white settlers. South Carolina's proprietors managed the colony poorly, and in 1719 the proprietary government was overthrown. The Crown then purchased North and South Carolina in 1729, making them royal colonies. In 1732, King George II granted a charter to James Oglethorpe and other trustees to found Georgia. The king hoped that Georgia would shield Britain's other colonies from Spanish Florida. Oglethorpe wanted the new colony to be a place where debtors who had been jailed for their debts in England could make a new start. In 1733, Oglethorpe and 120 colonists, mostly from England, founded the city of Savannah. Oglethorpe did not want Georgia to have large plantations owned by a few wealthy individuals. He wanted many small farmers to reach this goal. Oglethorpe outlawed slavery and limited the size of land grants. Soon, however, the settlers grew unhappy with Oglethorpe's strict rules. In 1752, the British government made Georgia a royal colony with new laws. Coastal Georgia was soon filled with large rice plantations worked by thousands of slaves. Economies of the southern colonies. The economies of the southern colonies depended on agriculture. They also exported materials for building ships such as wood and tar. Some colonies traded with local Indians for deerskins to sell. The colonies had many small farms and some large plantations. Farms did well because the South enjoyed a warm climate and a long growing season. Many farms grew cash crops that were sold for profit. Tobacco, rice, and indigo, a plant used to make blue dye, were the most important cash crops. The southern colonies' cash crops required a great deal of difficult work to grow and harvest. This meant a large workforce was needed. By the 1700s, enslaved Africans rather than indentured servants had become the main source of labor. Slavery was a viciously brutal condition for many inhabitants of the southern colonies. One former slave named L1A6 recorded his experiences. Tortures, murder, and every other imaginable barbarity are practiced upon the poor slaves with impunity or no punishment. I hope the slave trade will be abolished. Most of the southern colonies passed slave codes or laws to control slaves. Colonies with large numbers of slaves had the strictest slave codes. For example, South Carolina slaveholders feared that slaves would revolt. As a result, South Carolina's code said slaves could not hold meetings or own weapons. Some colonies did not allow slaveholders to free their slaves.